Hey there, how's it going? Welcome back to another video. Hope you're doing well, and today we're going to be talking about compressor pedals. Now, compressor pedals can be a little confusing because the effect they have on our tone isn't always as apparent as something like a distortion pedal, a flanger, or delay, or something like that that's really obvious. Compression can be much more subtle. So we're going to talk about what a compressor does. We're going to turn some knobs, get some sounds, and really hear what it does to our tone and what compression sounds like. And then talk about some reasons why you may want to include a compressor into your rig. As always, if you got questions, please leave those in the comments down below. Love questions. Also, if you have a compressor, let us know which one you have, how you like to use it, if you like it or not, all that good stuff. So, all right, let's get going. So what is compression, and what's going on inside that compressor pedal? Well, there's probably a lot of things going on inside there, but in a very broad general term, what a compressor pedal is doing is it's taking the loud parts of what you're playing and the quiet parts of what you're playing, and the difference between those two things is called dynamic range, and it's going to decrease the dynamic range. What that means is that pedal is going to reduce the volume of your loudest parts, it's going to increase the volume of your quieter parts, and therefore you're going to have less difference between loud and soft. And when you match that volume back up to where it was on the loudest parts, now everything is going to sound louder, fuller, beefier, and all that good stuff. So that's in a very broad sense what's going on. There's some other things that you can do for tone shaping and feel when you're playing and all that stuff, and we're going to dive into that when we talk about the different parameters and knobs and switches. But essentially that's what a compressor does. It decreases the dynamic range and just kind of makes everything sound a little bit louder. Alright, so let's start taking a look at what the different knobs, switches, parameters do on our compressor pedal. Today we're taking a look at the Mini Ego compressor by Wampler, basically for two reasons. One, it's the only one I have. Two, it's got a lot of the knobs, switches, parameters available to us that are on most pedals these days, or a lot of pedals made in the last 10 years. So that's going to be really helpful and translate well. But if you have a compressor that only has like one knob or two or whatever, these things are still going on. It just may be that certain parameters are set by default under the hood, or that when you turn a knob, it's actually kind of doing two things at once. So you'll be able to hear these individually, and then when you use yours, you'll be able to hear what's going on there as well. So this will still be beneficial for you. The first parameter we're going to take a look at, or first knob, however you want to think about it, on our Mini Ego compressor is sustain right there. And so basically what sustain is how much compression is going on. That's like, the meat and potatoes of what the compressor's doing. How hard is that squeezing our guitar signal? The more to the right, the more it's going to squeeze. The more to the left, a little bit less it's going to squeeze. Yes, it can be used to sustain the notes or chords that we're playing, make those longer. Also, if you're playing lead stuff, it's going to even out those notes as far as like volume differences. So some people think it makes it easier to play lead stuff because your notes just kind of pop off the fingerboard a little bit. It won't fix wrong notes, but it will make it easier to play lead stuff. Anyways, let's check out sustain. I'm going to play a G chord without the compressor, and you'll hear it die off like you would normally expect. And I'll put the compressor on, again, exaggerated setting, and it'll hold out longer. All right, so you could really hear that that chord be fuller, longer, and all that good stuff. The same thing would apply to individual notes and things like that. You may have also heard a little bit of noise going on there. This is an incredibly quiet pedal, but I don't have it on my pedal board with clean power and all that stuff. I got my lights going on, so I have a little bit of interference. That's one thing to know, is if you have a little noise in your signal, just like the quiet parts of what you're playing, that noise is going to get brought up and be more apparent as well. That's just something to keep in mind. Again, we got extreme settings going on here, so it's really going to bring that up if there's any noise in there at all. Again, sustain is just going to hold your notes longer, it's going to make it sound fuller, and it's going to even out individual notes as far as the volume goes. The next parameter we're going to talk about is attack. On our Mini Ego, it is going to be this switch right here. Some compressors, it's going to be a knob, where just like with our sustain, you can turn it for more or less. This is just a switch. It's got 2 settings, which works perfectly fine. Attack has a lot to do with, yes, the sound of the compressor and how it affects your guitar tone, but in my opinion, even more than that, how it feels when you play. So there's 2 kinds of attack, essentially. There's slow attack and fast attack. On the Mini Ego, when it's to the right, that is slow attack. When it's to the left, it is going to be fast attack. Slow attack means when that compressor sees your guitar signal, it's going to wait a few milliseconds, not very long, but a few milliseconds before it kicks in and does its thing. And that's going to allow kind of the natural attack of your guitar to come through more. And that's going to be good for like more percussive playing. Fast attack means that as soon as that pedal sees your guitar signal, it's going to clamp down and start compressing right away. And so therefore that attack's not going to really come through in the same way. It's going to get squashed right away. So it's going to feel different. It's going to sound a bit different and all that. So let's take a look at the difference between what fast attack and slow attack sounds like, starting with slow attack. So you could really hear the difference between the attack, especially on the individual notes. With the slow attack, it's more percussive, kind of a chicken picking thing. With the fast attack, it evened that out. And on the strumming, you could really hear that. It really it didn't kill off the attack, but it definitely made it much smoother than the slow attack. Now, again, we have exaggerated settings here so you can hear it, so you probably want to dial that back. But that definitely feels different when you play, which is a little hard for me to explain, but if you were to play, it would feel differently as well. The next knob we're going to talk about real quick on here is the volume knob. A lot of compressors have a volume knob. That's just because depending on your attack, depending on your settings and things like that, your compressor may make your sound quieter or louder, whatever. So you can use the volume to adjust if you want to make it the same volume as when it's not on. You can also use that volume to boost into your amp. Some people like to use this as like a lead boost kind of situation where you have the volume boost and then you can add a little compression to just kind of even out and make those lead parts a little beefier. That's definitely an option as well. So volume is pretty self-explanatory. You just put it where you want it and what's going to work for you. The next parameter we're going to talk about is a really powerful one. It's a great addition. I highly recommend getting a compressor pedal with this option, and that is the blend knob right here. Basically what the blend knob does is it kind of does the same thing that's been used a long time in recording studios when you're recording and mixing, and it's a thing called parallel compression. And basically what that means is you duplicate whatever the sound is, the signal coming in is, and they're running parallel, and you have one that's not affected by the pedal at all, and you have another one that's taken whatever the compression settings are, and it's fully affected. And then you use that blend knob to kind of blend how much of either one you want. So if it's straight at the middle, it's 50-50 like this. To the left, it's going to be more clean. To the right, it's going to be more of the compressed signal. And that's really handy because what that allows you to do is get some of the natural feel, the natural sound from your guitar to come through with that unaffected sound, but then you can also blend in compression and you can get some of the benefits of compression while keeping things still sounding fairly natural. One thing I like to do is set fairly extreme compression settings and then just kind of blend it in, and that seems to work really well. So on the Ego here, if we turn this all the way to the left, it's going to sound like it doesn't have any compression because it basically doesn't. Very little, if any. So now if I play a chord and hold it and I start blending that compressed signal in, you're going to hear the volume come up on the signal because the compression is starting to really kick in. So you could, as I dial that to the right, you could really hear that compressor starting to kick in. Generally, with a blend, a lot of times I'll keep it around 50%, maybe a little bit less. So let's just kind of see what 50% is doing. We'll play something without the compressor on. So you could hear, even with the blend knob down, we're getting some of the regular natural guitar sound coming through, but we still kind of got that compression thing going on as well. So it's a great way to balance those things out and provide a lot of tone options and flexibility inside your compressor. The next switch we're going to look at is the tone. Not all compressors have this. This has a tone switch right here. To the left is like normal. To the right is, it adds a little high end on top, just a little sparkle. Not a ton. I tend to not use it much, especially with the Telecaster, but this is what it sounds like. So if you're just looking for a little more top end on your tone on the Mini Ego, that is an option that you have. All right, so that basically covers all the general parameters you're going to find on most compressors. You may find fewer knobs, more, whatever, but those are really kind of the basics. So let's talk about a few reasons how you might want to use a compressor, or when you might want to use a compressor. We've touched on a few of them already, but we'll go ahead and highlight some of these. So one thing you might want to use it for is just holding out individual chords or notes longer. Another thing you might want to use it for is just being able to, when you're doing lead stuff, for your notes to be more even. That kind of makes it feel a little easier to play some lead stuff. Again, will not fix wrong notes, but makes it feel easier. Another reason you might want to use it is for strumming stuff, and you want that to be smooth and even. can definitely smooth that out and keep things very even. Another reason you might want to use a compressor, especially in a live situation, if you have parts where you're strumming hard like this, and then you got a couple parts where you're just kind of picking some individual notes lightly, without a compressor, there's going to be a huge volume difference between those. With a compressor, you can minimize the volume difference between those, and that way your picking parts won't get lost in a live mix or something like that. So play without the compressor and then with the compressor. So you could hear there's less of a volume difference when the compressor is on. So that might be one thing you want to use it for as well. Again, a couple things to note. If you have buzz in your signal at all, when you kick on a compressor, especially at higher settings, it's going to bring the buzz and noise up as well. So keep that in mind. Another thing to know is, like, if you have any extra finger sounds when you're playing, that stuff's going to get exaggerated as well. So while it makes this easier to play, you hear that kind of stuff is going to be exaggerated a bit as well. Just another thing to keep in mind. All right, so that wraps up our general overview of a compressor, what it's doing. Hopefully with those exaggerated sounds, you're able to hear what it's doing as well. Of course, if you dial that back, it's going to be more subtle, but it's still doing the same thing. If you have any further questions, as always, let me know in the comments down below. Love having questions. And again, if you have a compressor, let us know what you have, what you like about it, how you like to use it. Like, subscribe, all that jazz. Probably seeing some other videos you can check out right here. Other than that, have a great one, and we'll see you next time.